Welcome to Storytime with Mama V. I'm your host, Victoria, but you can call me Mama V. In this show, we go on storytime adventures where magic exists, where brave knights and courageous princesses come out to play, and where the good always defies evil. Now, get comfy, because storytime is about to begin. Hello, my beautiful listeners, and welcome to Storytime with Mama V. I'm so excited to read to you today. Today, I will be reading a story called Kylah Meets the Bees. Now, before we get into this story, there will be certain words in the story that you should be aware of and you should know what they mean. You will hear me read words such as apiary, which is the place where bees are kept, a collection of beehives. You will also hear me say beekeeper, and that is someone who owns and takes care of bees. I'll say the word nectar, and that is a sweet liquid produced by flowers that bees collect. And you'll hear me say the word hive, and that is the structure where bees live and work. Also, the book Kylah Meets the Bees is written by Catina K. Taylor. I encourage you to take a look at the physical book because not only is it an entertaining story, there's also a great education component that is included at the back of the book. Okay, let's get right into our story of Kylah Meets the Bees. Here we go. In the city, the summer sun beamed down. Kylah gripped her mom's hand tight at the apiary gate. I ain't sure about this, she muttered, eyeing the busy bees.
It's all good, said Dad. It's gonna be fun.
Mrs. Lee, the beekeeper, met them with a big hat and a bigger grin. Hey there, Kylah. Y'all ready to meet some bees today? She beamed. Kylah nodded. I sure am, but I'm still not sure about this. Bees can look scary, Mrs. Lee shared, as they watched safely from a distance. Just watch how she lands soft on that flower. She's here to get nectar, explained Mrs. Lee. Kylah peeked. Bees keep our greens growing and make honey. They're busy like us, Mrs. Lee said. Watching bees buzz from bloom to bloom, Kylah's fear eased. They're saying hi to each flower, she thought. Mrs. Lee led them to a hive. This is their house. Want to look inside? Kylah nodded, and Mrs. Lee showed her the bees' home. They build, eat, and sleep in here, she explained. Kylah's eyes widened. They ain't scary when you know what they are up to, she realized. Right, Mrs. Lee laughed. They talk by dancing. Check out this dancer, Mrs. Lee pointed to a bee wiggling. Kylah giggled. She got moves. Her fear forgotten, she leaned in closer. With the magnifying glass, Kylah saw their tiny legs and shiny wings. Look at them wings gleam, she cheered, amazed. The warm afternoon made the apiary a cozy spot. Can I help feed them? Kylah asked. Mrs. Lee handed her a jar of sugar water. Oh, they'll love this. Kylah held the jar as bees gently landed. She watched them sip. They need us, she thought, feeling a bond. Time to leave, but Kylah felt sad. She'd started scared, but found new friends. Y'all come back now, Mrs. Lee smiled. Bees and me will be here. Kylah waved to the bees. Bye, bees. See y'all soon, she called, beaming. She couldn't wait to return. At home, Kylah drew bees and trees, filling her room with the day's adventures. Bees are sweet like their honey, she told her parents. You did good, Dad said, proud. Brave as a bee. That night, Kylah dreamed of vibrant gardens alive with bees, each flower a burst of color, each bee a tiny dancer. She was ready to learn more, her fears replaced by fascination. Okay, my dear friends, Miss Kylah is one brave little lady. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was reading the story and I was like, oh my goodness, bees, they sting. But she went in there, she fed the bees, and she actually bonded with them. So check out the book because you don't want to miss the fun activities at the back. You really want to check out what Miss Kylah looks like, as well as Mrs. Lee, and all the other wonderful illustrations. On that note, this brings us to the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for listening in. And by the way, have you shared the podcast with a friend or a family member? If you haven't, please do so. That's how we spread the word about this podcast, and that's how we let more and more young listeners have access to these amazing stories and these absolutely wonderful authors. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next episode of Storytime with Mama V. Bye for now.